The story I'm about to tell you happened yesterday night. I live in Nantes, West France. I'm quite a petite girl, and I avoid confrontation whatever I can. I'm pretty good at it because since I can remember, I had a very strong sixth sense thing. I try to avoid people who make me anxious. It allowed me to survive some very dangerous situations and prevent one kidnapping. But that is not part of the story. Yesterday I visited a close friend of mine. A few days ago she broke her leg, so I decided to cheer her up by giving her a few gifts. The atmosphere was so nice that I didn't notice when it got dark outside. Despite the late hour, I decided to go home. I said goodbye to my friend and left her apartment. I was about 40 minutes from home, but I walked this distance many times without any problems. So I thought it would be the same this time. Oh, how wrong I was. Less than 5 minutes passed, and I just felt it was going to be hell. I was approaching one of the bridges in our city. I didn't see anyone around. I thought my senses were playing a trick on me. This happened before, so I kept going. The bridge was about 20 meters in front of me before I heard a conversation and a giggle. I turned my head slightly and saw 3 men walking towards me. I felt a cold sweat on my back, but it was too late to turn back. I didn't want to show them that I was afraid. I know this type of behavior provokes more harassment. I kept walking but turned the music down. I didn't take my headphones off because I didn't want them to know about my suspicions. I heard their footsteps behind me. They were saying something, but I didn't know what because they were speaking in a different language. I was already on the bridge when they caught up with me. As I said, I'm a petite girl. They were over 180 centimeters tall. They surrounded me. I had no choice but to go ahead. A shudder ran through my body. I didn't know what they wanted or what they were saying, but I felt that I was in danger. They kept talking to me. They leaned over and whispered something into my ears, and they laughed. This sound will haunt me for the rest of my life. At one point, they noticed I was doing my best to ignore them, and then the worst began. They started making animal noises. It may sound strange and maybe even funny, but it was terrifying to me. They howled, growled, whistled, and kissed the air loudly. They did these things very close to my face. I was desperate, but where would I go? I was on a bridge. I would kill myself if I jumped into the water, or at least break both of my legs, if I were lucky. Those 2 minutes to cross the bridge felt like an eternity for me. When we got to the end of the bridge, I was sweaty, close to tears. I thought I was going to throw up. I was shaking, which seemed to amuse them even more. And then a miracle happened. Someone called my name, very loud. I looked up and saw someone approaching us. He was a very tall man, several years older than me, but I didn't know him. I had no idea who he was or how he knew my name, but it didn't matter at the time. I felt he was my guardian angel. He came over to us and was staring furiously at the 3 strangers. I didn't see their faces, but they fell silent. "What are you doing to my girlfriend?" he asked, still frowning at them. He stretched out his hand in my direction, never taking his eyes off them. "Come on, sweetheart." I did not wait. I didn't know who he was, why he was helping me, but I didn't care. I gripped his hand tightly and almost nestled against his shoulder. My heart was beating fast and loud, but I was so thankful that he came to help me. 3 strangers and my savior exchanged glances. They were silent. I was starting to panic that they would attack him because he was there alone and I wouldn't have the strength to help him if they would attack. But it didn't happen. I almost heard their teeth grinding when one muttered something. My savior held my hand tightly and watched them. They turned back and went back on the bridge. We stood in the same place for some time. He looked at me and smiled, and at that moment my body gave up. I started shaking uncontrollably, and I almost drowned in my own tears. He didn't say a word. He just held my hand and gave me time to cool down. After a long moment, he offered to take me home. We walked slowly and talked about various things. Actually, he was talking all the time. I was just nodding. I found out he was walking near the bridge and noticed the whole scene. he decided to react and help me if it turned out that his assumptions were correct. I asked him how he knew me and how he knew my name. He looked surprised, then smiled and said he didn't know my name. He used this name because it is one of the most popular in the country. When we got home, I was still shaking but happy. I offered him something to drink. I don't live alone, so I wasn't worried about letting him in, but he kindly declined and we said goodbye. I can't believe how lucky I was yesterday. If I hadn't met him, I don't know if I could write about it today. So Luke, thank you. Thank you so much for saving me. I hope to meet you one day. As to these 3 strangers, I hope one day you will understand that your behavior is reprehensible and you will change your attitude to women who walk alone. And I hope I never meet you again. Update. I reported to the police about what happened to me. They were very helpful, but I feel uneasy thinking about it. I found out that I'm not the only one who informed them about dangerous men walking down the street at night. 2 women had done this before and they described the men who harassed them. The descriptions match, so the police hope to catch them soon. I was scared and I was hesitant, but I told them about my savior too. Fortunately, he did not appear in any of the statements of the 2 women. One woman described 3 men, the other described 5, but their description did not match Luke. I want to believe he had nothing to do with them, but I'll be careful. Thanks to you, I understand. I have to observe my surroundings and not let my guard down. I am still very grateful for Luke for saving me. I want to believe he is a great and honest man, and I want to thank you again for your warnings and support. If I find out more, I'll let you know. Hey, this is my first post ever on Reddit, and I'm on mobile, so I'm sorry for the shit formatting. This happened 2 years ago, August 11th, 2018. And since the anniversary just passed, I thought I should finally share this story. My fiance and I were on the second night of our 2-night camping trip at a popular campground about half an hour from where we live. For reference, my fiance is black. We live in a predominantly white, conservative, and racist area. This is important later. On our first night, we kept hearing noises in the woods around us. The campsite right beside ours to the right was occupied, but the one to the left was not. The campsites are about 150 yards apart, and we had camped here in the exact same plot the year before. Needless to say, we were familiar with the area and the various kinds of animals that live in the woods. The first night we heard shuffling around our tent. It was obvious something large moving around. We brushed it off and assumed it was just a deer. Now back to the main event. August 11th, we spent the day at the Battlefields, a town over with my family. They had all been invited to join us for the day by my fiancé as a surprise for me while he proposed to me. We stayed with my family into the evening, about 6 p.m., before heading back to our campsite. When we got back, things were really odd. Someone had obviously been in our tent. Our blankets were thrown around, clothes were on the floor, and my backpack had been rearranged and I was missing underwear. But hey, we were stupid 19-year-olds and decided that since whoever had busted in had left and hadn't taken anything important, it was fine and they wouldn't come back. So we set up a campfire and sat out until it was dark, roasting hot dogs and s'mores, smoking cigarettes and celebrating our engagement. Around 9:30 p.m., we put out our fire and decided to go into our tent for the night to celebrate a little more. Nothing too loud or obnoxious. Immediately after we finished, we started to hear the noises outside our tent again, but this time we focused in. We heard clear footsteps and at one point, a man whispering. We looked at each other and our eyes got wide. Someone was definitely walking around outside our tent. We were still and completely silent, just listening to the footsteps, and we heard whispering again. Shit! Make that 2 men walking around our tent. As if we had the ability to read minds, my fiancé said, I have to go to the bathroom. And I agreed. The bathroom was up on a hill from our site. Most people who were in the lower sites, like ours, drove their cars up to the bathroom. Now here's the part I still get chills thinking about it. We got up and were getting dressed. My fiancé had just turned on the light in our tent, put his binder on when a man spoke directly to us from right outside the tent. "What are you doing?" I can't even describe how malice and menacing this voice sounded. It was clearly directed at us, and he said it with a snicker. He was watching us through the walls of the tent. Again, for this part, we were stupid 19-year-olds. So we decided to just run for it to the car. My fiance grabbed his pocket knife and his keys and stepped out of the tent. He pulled me with him and we ran like hell to the car. I heard the footsteps running behind us and then turning and running up to another campsite. At the bathroom, we talked over our options. We talked about sleeping in the car or driving into town. Then we had another idea. We drove back down to our campsite and began packing everything into the car. At this point, it was around midnight. We moved faster than I think either of us thought possible, wrapping up the tent with our belongings still in it and grabbing our folding chairs. We were all packed in 5 minutes and hopped into the car to leave. I jumped out at the end of the drive and grabbed our nameplate, which had my full name on it, off of the post. As we pulled out of the campsite, I saw our assailants for the first time. Stalking through the woods onto our campsite were 2 tall white men. I realized that these were the same men who had been driving past our campsite the whole time we were there, just glaring at us and muttering to each other. One was wearing camo hunting gear and the other was wearing a Confederate flag tank top, but both were carrying large hunting knives, unsheathed and at the ready. They turned when they saw our car driving away, and one started to make chase until the other stopped him. I made eye contact with the man in camo, and he smiled the most terrifyingly evil smile at me and shook his head slowly. We drove the long way home, taking all the weirdest, hardest to follow roads, and called my dad so he would know we were coming. When we got home, we told my dad everything, and he just shrugged it off as us being paranoid, so I never told anyone else besides all of you now. I am convinced to this day that this was going to be a racially motivated attack. The campground was not heavily populated, and my fiance was the only non-white person at any of the campsites. It was no accident that the 2 men who had been shadowing us since our arrival and wore Confederate flags and had one on their truck decided to target the interracial couple. I still get cold chills when I think about how close we were being killed or seriously hurt that night, and just how lucky we were that our reckless plan to just make a run for it worked. So, to those men who stalked our campsite with hunting knives, let's not meet. When I was in my early 20s and living in Chicago, I wasn't making much money. When I found this apartment, it was too good to be true. The top floor of a duplex and 6 rooms for $775 a month. The agent who showed me the apartment stressed to me that the landlords were very religious. I didn't have a problem with that, even if it did sound a little ominous. The landlords were an elderly couple that lived downstairs. They seemed okay at first. When I saw them in the yard, they would smile at me. I took good care of the house. Then when they saw I was having my boyfriend over, things started to get really weird. One day I was in my office writing. I hear a knock at the door. I open it, and it's the old lady from downstairs. Before I can say hello, she says, "Have you ever gotten an abortion?" I shut the door in her face. No thanks. This was a colossal mistake. The house was laid out kind of weird. There was a door at the bottom of the flight of stairs that I thought led to a communal laundry room, but after accidentally opening it, once I discovered it led directly into my landlord's living room. I unfortunately learned this the hard way. I was in the kitchen cooking. My boyfriend was at work and I was by myself when I heard what sounded like a click of a door. "Okay," I say out loud. What the fuck was that? I didn't really make the connection. It could have been the door that led into their living room. I walked into the hallway and looked around. I don't see anyone at the bottom of the hallway. I poked my head into all of the rooms, nobody there. Then I looked down the staircase leading to their house, and the neighbor lady is standing there, staring me down. I screamed. She flinched and stepped back into her apartment and swung the door shut. After that, every time I left the house, and I spent every possible moment out of the house after that incident, I would come back and something would have been moved. A window would be shut once the shower was dripping and my towel was damp. I couldn't lock the door because since it was technically a door to their house, they were the only ones with the key. The knocking got so frequent, 3 or 4 times a day, that me and my boyfriend propped up an old mattress so we wouldn't have to hear it while we slept. The second to last straw was when I opened the door for work and the stairs were gone. I physically could not leave my house because there were no stairs. They had been dismantled and were sitting on their porch. I called them repeatedly, but they didn't answer. Finally, their son came out of the house and explained they were remodeling their porch. He told me I had to cut through their apartment downstairs. I descended the stairs and opened the door, and they were both sitting at their filthy kitchen table, staring at me. The phone was in its cradle. They must have heard it ringing. They kept staring at me with this blank look on their faces. I crossed the kitchen and left out their back door. A few days later, I come home from my job and notice the bathroom floor was almost completely flooded, like someone left a faucet on or a shower on. The old woman, seeing that I had come home, came upstairs and knocked, screaming at me that I had flooded the bathroom and that her son had to come fix it. I was so run down at this point that I just told her it was okay. Her son comes by a few hours later. He is shit-faced. I open the door and tell him that I need an hour or so before he comes and picks something up and swings it at me. It was a massive wrench. I somehow duck out of the way and he stumbles over. I book it down the newly repaired stairs as quickly as possible and call the police. They come by and take down a complaint, but claim since there was no physical contact they can't do anything. I learned later that the old couple has a daughter on the force. In the middle of the night, me and my boyfriend and several of his friends packed all of our stuff into the Chevy Astro. We lived in hotels in the van for a month until we found another house. They never attempted to contact us again. Old landlords? Let's not meet again. Edit. I'm going to file a police report. I don't know why I haven't before. Thanks for inspiring me to do so. Second edit. I didn't technically file a police report. They just took down a complaint, whatever that means.